Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Confederation Club of Waterloo's March webinar series. We're delighted that you made it this evening to hear about our presenter, Minister Fedeli, and we welcome you to learn more about how our organization is bringing Canadian digital politics to life. My name is Barb Shackleton, and I'm the Confederation Club Director of Marketing and your host for this evening. Before we dive in, just a few items of interest to mention. We are recording this webinar, so you'll be able to listen to it later on or share it with your friends and family. We also plan to poll the audience, so we encourage you to participate, and your responses are completely anonymous. If you wish to submit a question, pop it into the chat box, and Stephen Cage, our Speakers Committee Chair, will be able to moderate your question after our presentation. Let's dive in a little bit. I want to give you a little bit of background about the Confederation Club and our history. It's been around for 45 years, and we've hosted prime ministers, both conservative and progressive conservative, including Joe Clark, Stephen Harper, Kim Campbell, and of course, Minister Brian Mulroney. Our impressive speakers list is available at confederationclub.ca, and we encourage you to visit there to see that list. Looking to the future, we have a tradition of hosting conservative and progressive conservative ministers and prime ministers, and of course this evening is no exception to that. Whether digital or in person, we really appreciate the time that they take to speak to our club, and we hope that we'll be able to have something in person in the coming months. And now I'll hand it off to Gary Zhang, our club president.
Thank you, Barb, and good evening to all the attendees online. So tonight, our speaker is the Honorable Victor Fedeli. The Honorable Victor Fedeli is a lifelong entrepreneur, successful business person, and a philanthropist, and serves the Ford government as Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade. Vic's business experience led his firm called Fedeli Corporation to be ranked 34th in the top 50 best places to work in Canada in 1989. It also served him well when he was elected 2 terms as the mayor of North Bay from 2003 to 2010. As a mayor, Vic focused on fiscal prudence and economic development, restoring hope and restoring solvency to North Bay. In 2011, Vic was elected to the Ontario legislature and is now serving his 3rd term as the MPP for Nipissing. In 2018, the PC caucus unanimously elected him to serve as the interim leader of the official opposition. So Vic served 10 terms on the board of North Bay and the District Chamber of Commerce, served as a director with a global vision, and has served on many agencies, boards, and commissions, often as a chair. Vic is married to a local humorist writer, Patty, and is always seen in one of his trademark yellow ties, which is seeing right now. So Vic, on behalf of Confederation Club and its members, it is our greatest honor to have you tonight, and welcome to our webinar. Vic, take the floor.
Thanks very much, Jerry, for your very kind introduction. I apologize. I do have my yellow tie on tonight. I took it off. I've been in this chair on Zoom calls since well, for more than 12 hours today. So I thought at least I'll do is take the tie off. But I want to say to you, Barbara, thanks for reaching out and inviting me. And so thanks to the Confederation Club, the whole team, for organizing this event and for everything you do to advocate for the party in the Waterloo region. We're really deeply appreciative of all that you're doing. You know, our government has always felt that our primary role is to make Ontario open for business and open for jobs. So you're going to hear me for the next few minutes talk primarily about business. When we talk about open for business, in the past, that has typically, as conservatives, that's typically meant reducing business costs, cutting red tape so that businesses can invest and grow. But this pandemic has been an extraordinary time and has called for extraordinary measures. Back in October, we met virtually, no, actually in real life, if I remember. We met with Waterloo's Communitech. Yes, it was at their building to discuss our government's ongoing efforts in the medtech space. And we've consulted with companies all across the sector, specifically in the innovation hub of KW, to understand the need of technology in addressing our response to COVID-19 pandemic. So you've seen innovative companies like Kitchener-based O2 and Waterloo's Swenco. They have stepped up with solutions to address not only your local needs, but province-wide need and national needs, and quite frankly, international needs, with what I like to call the next generation of PPE. Both companies have received funding from something that we developed under our ministry called the Ontario Together Fund, but I'll tell you more about that later. The end of December, our government had to take an extremely difficult but very necessary step of instituting a province-wide shutdown in response to the alarming rise in COVID-19 cases. Now, I was with Premier Ford on the first shutdown, and he's a lifelong entrepreneur. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, and in his typical language, he said to me, "Oh, buddy, this is bad. We have to do it." Nothing would have hurt him more than having to shut down business. And when we saw businesses reopening, there was certainly hope. And then the variant that struck caused us to have to go back into this shutdown, and it was so disheartening. But the step was put in place to stop the spread of COVID-19, especially the variants, preserve our capacity in our healthcare system, and protect the most vulnerable. And quite frankly, those people who care for them as well. So as we saw the restrictions gradually eased across the province, I must say that we're acutely aware that businesses continue to struggle during this challenging period. So I'm here in where I live in Corbeil, Ontario. It's just south of North Bay, my hometown where I was born and raised. I've lived here for the last 64 years. I live in a little town of Corbeil, where some of you will remember the birthplace of the Dion quintuplets. And I haven't been to Toronto in quite some months. When the legislature rose in December, I came home first week of December and haven't been back to Toronto since then. My community has been in an extended lockdown. We just came out of stay at home just this week. And I was finally able to get out and get a haircut. And it was so painful to go and talk to the business community, those who were open for the first time in months. And that reminded me when I saw these individual business people who I grew up with and shared an office on Main Street with many of them. That reminded me that's why we're providing this significant support to the businesses, to the workers, to the families, as we work towards our economic recovery. And the one that I'm referring to specifically is the Small Business Support Grant. And that provides business with a very critical injection of funds that they use to take care of their most urgent needs. And so that fund is still active, it's still available. Any business that was required to shut down by the government or to severely restrict, like a restaurant or a retailer that was curbside or a delivery only, pickup or delivery only. There's our grant, and it's still available now, retroactively to when they were closed. It's a grant of up to $20,000. And I can tell you from the business people I've talked to, it has provided a much needed relief for all of those small businesses that have been weighed down by COVID-19. In fact, we're around $1.3 billion has already been put in the bank accounts of over 92,000 small businesses. And that has happened since the 15th of January. That's including application processing and the money in their accounts, $1.3 billion. And that was designed specifically so that the recipient, if they're eligible, can use that money in any way. It's a grant, it's not a loan, and they can use that money in whatever makes sense for them. Some used it for maintaining their inventory and restocking, but they have the flexibility and the freedom to use the money for whatever is best for them. And I have to say, it's really, really had a huge impact. And because we're business people, we understand the urgency of these funds for small business. And so we were making sure that it went from application to cash in hand was seamless. We also are connecting eligible business with additional sources of money. We've got digital support, PPE grants, financial planning, personalized advice. We've got a real suite of things you would expect from business people helping other business people. We have what's called, on a small scale now, the Main Street Relief Grant. This is a one-time grant that reimburses Main Street businesses for up to $1,000 in PPE costs that they would have incurred. We also recently understood that that grant needed to be expanded, and it used to be for businesses 2 to 9 employees. It's now 2 to 19 employees, and that's for people who are in the retail trade, accommodation and food, repair, maintenance, personal services, laundry services, gyms, yoga, and then we also added recently arts, entertainment, and recreation. And so that's been a very big boost. But we also know that there are bigger businesses that are struggling as well. And as part of the action plan, if you remember, we called it Protect, Support, Recover. We're also investing about $4.8 billion in various initiatives that are going to support jobs today and remove barriers. So there's $600 million. This is a really interesting one. And I have to say the take up, the Premier continues to say the take up on this one is not as strong as he would have thought. Right now, the province of Ontario will pay your business property taxes for all the days you were forced to be closed and your energy bills. And that means your electricity bill and your natural gas or propane bill will rebate you for those things. And there's $600 million in the kitty for that. And so we're also providing tax relief. And we're also, we can talk about it later if it comes in the questions. I want you to know we're providing municipalities with the ability to cut your property taxes by creating a new category called small businesses. You know, there's residential, commercial, industrial, farm. Small business is a new category that they're allowed to reduce your property taxes. So we can chat about that if you have questions as well. And you know, I'm going to continue for a few more minutes just talking about some of the things that we've done, because these are things that a lot of business people are not yet aware of. We permanently increased the employer health tax payroll exemption to $1 million. And that means that about 90% of all employers in Ontario no longer pay EHT or employee health tax. One of the things that we talked about was the high cost of doing business. Now, when we first took office, we heard loud and clear, especially from the auto sector, that the cost of doing business in Ontario was getting out of hand. And, you know, the Premier, again, in his usual jargon, buddy, we got to do something about this. And we began to look at how to reduce the cost of doing business here. And we began by reducing the WSIB payments by 47%. You're going to see where I'm getting to in a minute, because this is really significant. WSIB reduction of premiums without touching the benefits, by the way. Then we put, and that's about $2.2 billion in savings for business every year. Then we put in something called the accelerated capital cost allowance, and that's a long way of saying you can write off your new equipment in year. And that's about $1 billion savings. Then we did not go ahead after we were elected with all of the Liberal tax increases that were scheduled to come in January of 2019. None of those went ahead. Hundreds of millions. There was one tax that was 365 million. You remember, as a business person, the passive income tax. The federal Trudeau government had gone ahead with that, and the when provincial government was implementing it on January 1, we did not go ahead with that, saving tens of millions of dollars for our business community as well. Then we began our red tape reduction, which we can tell you line by line saves about 330 million. And then just this January, we reduced industrial and commercial tax hydro rates by 14 and 16%. And finally, we reduced your provincial share of your local property taxes by anywhere from 6 to 30%, depending on which community you're in. We standardized them all. We brought them all down to 0.88%. The bottom line was that's about a $450 million savings. Now that's a lot of numbers, and I've thrown a lot of data out. I could boil it all down to the one sentence I talk about with business. Since the day we got elected, we've reduced the cost of doing business in Ontario by $7 billion each and every year going forward. Last year, this year, next year, and every year going forward. That's $7 billion. That has put Ontario back in action. We jumped in to the marketplace, and that's why this morning, when you see all those fundamentals that we put in place, the business community is aware of those, and all those fundamentals are still in place, so that this morning there are more men and women that woke up to go to a job in manufacturing this morning than did last February, a year ago February, before COVID, when we were at our peak. There's more today than there were a year ago pre-COVID, and that is a spectacular statistic for you to know, because we put those fundamentals in place. Premier Ford said we've got to reduce the cost of doing business. We did it by $7 billion a year with all the levers we can pull as a government, and that's what's bringing businesses back. And that's a lot of what's firing up. A lot of them, by the way, end up in the Waterloo region. There's no question about that. We also, in the COVID-19 beginning, the Premier calls it the Ontario spirit. We really saw that happen immediately. We had many companies that pivoted what they were manufacturing and got into helping us with PPE, with personal protective equipment. We saw that in the beginning of COVID, when you certainly would have heard from President Trump, no, you're not allowed 3M to ship those N95, that mask. You're not allowed to ship that to Canada. We thought, all right. The Premier said, never again will we be caught not making the things we need. And so we put together the Ontario Together Fund that I spoke of earlier for SWENCO and for O2. We put this fund together, and it allowed us to build a reliable domestic supply of PPE, where we weren't making any of this before. We're now making masks, N95 masks, face shields, ventilators. We made 10,000 ventilators. Linamar made parts for them. All of these are all made in Ontario. We're making gowns, everything but gloves. And we're really working hard on the gloves right now. But Ontario's always been Canada's workshop. We know that we can produce anything here. We have a manufacturing might, and you take that might combined with that Ontario spirit that the Premier talked about, and we're unstoppable. Not only did we have the Ontario Together Fund, but we had the Ontario Together website. And in that website, it was really interesting. We put out a challenge to the business community to help us provide not only supplies and ideas, but solutions. And businesses right from across the province, they responded very quickly to some of the most complex challenges. And we received 30,000 proposals. With Ontario businesses coming through with their supplies and a lot of their innovation and ideas to help protect the frontline workers and our most vulnerable. And again, that's where the Ontario Together Fund came in to get some of those strongest ideas up and running quickly and help those companies build up their production capacity so they could pivot quickly to manufacture supplies. And we really saw them all of a sudden from going from zero basically zero PPE being Ontario made to right now the province through our health organizations, we can now purchase 74% of all of our healthcare PPE purchases are now made in Ontario. All that's within 12 months, by the way. That is what we talked about when we talk about this Ontario spirit. That's the response that we got from business. Those ideas, by the way, also translated into us buying $1.4 billion from those companies that went on the portal, those 30,000 companies. About 19,000 of them had were able to actually sell us things. 29 million gowns, 491 million gloves, 148 million masks, 14 million face shields. And so the Ontario Together Fund so far has funded about 26 companies and 7 organizations. And they make everything from hand sanitizer to, as I said, ventilator parts. And then we also have launched Supply Ontario, and that's a brand new agency that's just getting off the ground. And it's a centralized supply chain agency. And that's really going to stabilize access to our high quality supply of critical products, including PPE. And here's what I like to say. I think you'll like this. This is where instead of putting an RFP or a request for proposals or an RFQ, request for quotations, instead of always doing that, we're now asking, we're getting to the point where we'll be asking for a challenge. So if you look at it this way, instead of, oh, we're ordering 10,000 buggy whips. Why? Because we always order 10,000 buggy whips. Now, instead of a proposal for a quote on those, it'll be, give us your ideas. We challenge you for your ideas. How do we make our horses go faster? So now we're getting creative ideas instead of just the standard purchasing, because we've always done it that way. And it's really creating opportunities for businesses. And it is stimulating economic growth, not only here at home, but right across, especially in the Waterloo region. We're really seeing that. And we've made a lot of progress. And so I then want to just pivot a little bit more and talk about the fact that not only have those businesses supported Ontario, but Ontario is back supporting them. So there was a poll that showed that 73% of Ontarians said they already try to purchase Canadian-made products. And since COVID-19, 56% of Ontarians said they would try to purchase domestic goods more often. So we thought, well, if they want to purchase domestic goods and they want to purchase goods that are made here in Ontario, then we should let them know what's made in Ontario. And so we have Canada United, that's a program of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. And then we've got the CME, or Canadian Manufacturer and Exporters. We have helped fund Ontario Made. And this showcases the best of what Ontario has to offer. And it really shows what, I'll give you an example. Before the lockdown, I was in my local Home Hardware in North Bay. And in their paint department, they've got this huge banner, and it's across the whole aisle, Ontario Made, and it's a certain little bug, a certain little logo. And if you look at their Beauty Tone paint, every one of them has the Ontario Made logo. It's a special little logo on it. PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, the list, there are 8,000 products that are identified now with that little bug, that Ontario Made. Almost 2,000 companies have signed up to do that. And you can go on to supportontariomade.ca and you'll see these world-class manufacturers. They're all there. And then we've also seen them put out an Ontario Made consumer directory. And so, you know, what the Premier has said is, look, if you're in to buy a barbecue and you've got the Weber barbecue that's made in Chicago, and you got the Napoleon barbecue that's made in Barrie, or the barbecue that's made in Waterloo, pick the one maybe that's made in Canada, pick the one maybe that's made in Ontario rather than one made in Chicago. All things being equal, let's show them that we're saying thank you to Broil King and to the others. Let's show them that we are grateful for the people that they employ. And so we've made it really, really easy for people to identify those products that are made in Ontario. We're going to continue supporting Ontario jobs and Ontario businesses and Ontario families. We think we have a role to play in making sure that we emerge from this pandemic stronger and more self-reliant. And so we've done it in PPE, and now we're pivoting to make sure that we're making other things here in Ontario that we just stopped making a while ago because, yeah, it was easier to ship it offshore and let somebody else do it. We know that we need that here. So we're focusing on pharmaceuticals, we're focusing on tech, and we're focusing on advanced manufacturing. Those are really important here in the province of Ontario. And so we're adapting very quickly. We're preparing for the post-COVID economic recovery. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. And I think we've all been through it for a year today, as a matter of fact. And so we know that when this pandemic is largely behind us, I think the way we do business is going to look very different in the future. And I'm excited to have that opportunity to chat with you about that. But I will tell you that if we thought competition was tough globally before, it is going to be even tougher next month, the months after, and in the years ahead. And so we need to get out there globally. We can't just roll out a welcome mat, but I think you're going to see us having to fend off competing jurisdictions for new investments. I had a meeting with the consuls general of the G7, and each one of them started off talking to me about how they're reshoring businesses. And that's a nasty way of saying we're pushing our head offices in Ontario to get back out of Ontario, back into the States or back into the European countries. And so we're creating a new investment attraction agency. It'll be launched literally any day, and it's called Invest Ontario. And this new agency will be run by people with private sector experience. And they are going to be deal hunters and deal closers. So we're removing it out of the ministry and putting it with a private sector board. And we're really going to make sure they have all the tools, all the expertise that they need to tailor these investments. And as I said, in the life sciences, the tech, and in the advanced manufacturing sector, because those are three that we already have a leg up in. But we need to continue to position Ontario as a top-tier destination for investment. And we're going to show people at home and across the world why Ontario is open for business and open for jobs. So this is really strange doing this virtually. I don't get to see any reaction. I don't know whether I should be sitting down and shutting up or keep on going, but I'm almost done. I just wanted to tell you that throughout the pandemic, the people of Ontario have made, all of you have made difficult sacrifices to stop the spread of the virus, and many at a great personal cost. But through it all, we know that you have all continued to support one another. And I go back to what Premier Ford said. This is the Ontario spirit, and you've all shown it, and we'll continue working together, especially as we come out of this and achieve a full economic recovery. So thanks for the opportunity to spend this time with you, and I look forward to answering your questions. I hope I didn't talk too long. Again, it's hard without audience reaction to know which areas to expand and keep chatting about, and when it's time just to fold them. But I'll do that now, Jerry and Steve. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Vic. We're now moving to the moderated question and answer segment of the webinar. Confederation Club members and other attendees have pre-submitted some questions. If other attendees would like to ask a question to Minister Fedeli, please enter it using the question and answer function. And we've actually got quite a few really good questions that have come in online. So I'm actually going to start with some of the online questions. First question, great overview, Minister. The Business and Economic Support Team of Waterloo Region, which I chair, has been focused on the following question. While we await more widespread vaccination, what can we do differently this time to avoid another lockdown? Rapid workplace screening, better ventilation, use of medical grade, better masks like some of our top employers like Toyota. Your thoughts are most welcome. Thanks, and keep up the stellar job.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. And thanks for the great work that you're doing in the Waterloo region, because I have to tell you, you guys are on fire when it comes to being in the tech sector, and of course with Toyota in Woodstock and Cambridge in the auto sector. You know, this will segue into my answer then. Ontario is the only, well, we're the #2 auto manufacturing jurisdiction in all of North America, just behind Michigan. So we're the #2 in North America. We're also the #2 tech cluster in all of North America, just behind Silicon Valley. So, but we are the only place in North America where these two come together. And that is really critical when you think about the decisions that you're hearing from some of the large auto companies. And I'm quite confident you're going to hear more. It's because we can marry the tech and the manufacturing, and that is unusual and unique. And so we see great companies like Toyota in your region who are doing the rapid testing. And that, when you ask what can we be doing more of, until there's a vaccine in everybody, the one thing that you can do with companies, 100 people and more, I would say, although we'll take anybody, sign up for the Pan-Abbott, the rapid testing that we have. They're free. We supply them. We, the province of Ontario, supply these to you free of charge. We guide you through. There's a little bit of work you have to do in reporting. There's no confidential information. There's no person's name. You just need to tell us how many did you test and how many were positive. These kinds of things. Very, very limited, and it's all done electronically, no paper. But until there's a vaccine, the chief medical officer of health says we need you to practice all of the social distancing and those things. But it's the rapid testing. 15 minutes, you have your results. And so we've gone, we see companies like Magna and Toyota and Honda, Bombardier, Algoma Steel and the Sioux. There are a lot of companies who have signed up and who are doing this. We need more. We have the capacity to do, I think it's 50,000 a day. And so, if you have a company and you are interested in helping the province of Ontario, that's what we need you to do.
Excellent. Okay, next question is also online. What is the government doing to encourage the long-term care facilities to take patients back from the hospitals to free up the acute care beds?
Well, you've continued to hear, so I'll give you my own example here in my community where I live. We had a long-term care facility in a little town called Trout Creek, just south of here. And the previous government closed that long-term care facility, maybe for the right reasons, but nonetheless, it was closed. And what happened to all of those residents? They all end up in our hospital, taking up a hospital bed until the long-term care facilities in our area or nearby were able to take these residents. But even still, years later now, we still have a facility in our own hospital. I think they call it Cedar Lodge now, and it's where the long-term care residents live, in a hospital. That's why you've seen us make the announcements that we are making unprecedented investments in new long-term care facilities. That's one, and renovating the older versions, the ones with wards, things like that. You're seeing us make these unprecedented investments, and we will continue to invest in new and upgraded long-term care facilities so that we can bring those people out of our hospitals and into long-term care. That's the plan. That's the plan, and we have been rolling that out. You've heard announcement after announcement. I think either at the end of last year or at the beginning of this year, there's a rapid program that was announced where we announced a small group that we were fast tracking we're doing everything possible to be able to open as many of these new beds as possible. I hope
Excellent.
that helps. Again, I don't have any it's hard to get when you have no reaction. It's hard to know, like, well, you didn't, I want more, or stop, you've already answered it. So I'm just going to wing it.
No, that was excellent. Next question. What is the Ontario government doing to leverage its relationship with the U.S. Great Lakes states with respect to your portfolio generally as we emerge from the pandemic, and specifically with respect to Michigan and Governor Whitmer's move to cancel the Line 5 Enbridge easement?
Okay, Line 5. I'm just making notes here so I make sure I cover this thing. It's been a very long, a very long day. So let me first start with what we're doing with the Great Lakes and other states. So we've heard words first from President Trump. Well, actually, first from President Obama and then Vice President Biden. The first time we ever heard "Buy America." Then we heard President Trump with America First and Buy America. And now, of course, President Biden signing the executive order about Buy America. So what we have done and what the Premier and I had started to do before COVID, in fact, our very last out-of-country trip together, we were in Washington, and then we were in Texas in February. And we came home and couldn't go back because of COVID. We had made arrangements with many of the governors of the surrounding Great Lakes and all the way to Maryland. And in fact, Maryland is the first one we signed it's called a Strategic Investment and Procurement Agreement, SIPA. We call them SIPAs, Strategic Investment and Procurement Agreement. And what this allows us, for instance, in Maryland to do is have a one-off deal with the state of Maryland and the province of Ontario that your businesses can do business with the province of Ontario, bid on projects, and our businesses here in Ontario can bid on your projects in Maryland. And that's the Strategic Investment Procurement Agreement that we've made. And we plan, and we had been working on having several of these nearby states sign the SIPAs. Why Maryland? The governor of Maryland was the chairman at the time of the National Governors Association. And so we had arranged for him to come to Ontario in April of last year. Of course, it all got canceled, and bring for the first time ever the National Governors Association. We're going to have their meeting, their monthly meeting in Ontario, Canada. It was perfect, and we hope to get back to that when this ends. And that's what we're doing to work with these governments in our nearby area to increase trade. Think about Ohio for a second. 300,000 men and women woke up this morning to go to a job in Ohio to make products to ship to Canada. Just in the state of Ohio, there's 9 million Americans who go to work every day just to make products to ship to Canada. So when we hear Buy America, the one thing that's my job, and I just had an op-ed piece published yesterday in the States on it should be Buy North America. That's what it should be. We can do that. We can do that together. We're doing it now. There are many types of steel that we make in Canada they do not make in the States. They don't have the natural resources for it. They need what we're buying. So it can't just be Buy America, except for things that we can't make and we need from you. It's got to be universal, and it's got to be two-way. The story goes, everybody in the auto sector, certainly in the Waterloo region, knows that parts go back and forth 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times before they're put in a car. So you make a widget here in Ontario, it's shipped to the States, it gets added to a bigger piece, that gets shipped back here, it's added to an even bigger piece, it goes into an engine in John Deere in Iowa. That gets put into a tractor. That tractor is sold to somebody in Saskatchewan. They grow wheat, oats. Those oats are shipped to the States to make cereal. That cereal is shipped here. This it goes back and forth every day. There's $400 billion in two-way trade between Ontario and the US. If Ontario was our own country, we would be the US's third largest trading partner. That's how big our trade is with the US. So, what are we doing? We're working with the governors. We have opened an agent general office in Texas. That's where the premier and I visited. We opened one in Chicago. We have somebody on site now. We're looking at one in New York. We have our trade office in Washington. So it is one of the big files that we deal with day to day. And then we hear from Governor Whitmer on line 5. So we've done, and this is more a file that is in the hands of Minister Rickford and Minister Walker from the energy side. They are doing the day-to-day carriage of the file. But our ministry has been involved because think of the amount of employees in Ontario that are absolutely affected by that. So we are working very strategically and having these discussions directly and with Michigan, as well as with the federal government. From my part as well, I've done what every MPP should be doing. You should be writing to your federal MP and saying, what gives? Get on this. There's a lot at stake. The price of energy is going to go up. The price of home heating fuel will go up. The price of everything will go up if this is not a victory for us, as I fully expect it will be. So we're working very diligently on this file, but it's being led, this particular one is being led by Ministry of Energy.
Excellent. Next question. What efforts are being made to ease interprovincial trade?
That's interprovincial. Thank you. So this is another interesting one. Now, here we are today. The world heard COVID for the first time a year ago. I was home from Texas with the premier and about to go to Alberta to visit and have dinner with the premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney. We were having dinner specifically on the interprovincial trade file. We have been dealing face-to-face, actually, on interprovincial trade because Alberta is about the most open on trade, and Ontario is there with them. We believe in free trade. I asked the premier one day, when we turned our attention to interprovincial trade and what we're going to do, I said, are we free traders, Premier? And of course we are. And so we've been working very, very closely with the provinces to try to release, and I'll give you a couple of funny examples, funny but not in a really funny way, to do this. Now, we heard of COVID. I was scheduled to fly, and so I sat with my office. Said, "Well, should I still go? What's this COVID thing going to be?" So, well, why don't we give it 2 weeks and decide if you'll go back? And here it is a year later, and we're still here, and we have not been to Alberta, but we've had our phone calls. Premier Kenney and I have had calls. Premier Ford. We're all involved in this. We really believe that we need to break down those barriers. We can't be afraid of having BC wine being allowed in Ontario. They're not going to be shipping the $12 bottle of wine. I mean, and they can't be afraid to have our Ontario products shipped there either. Those days have to be behind us. I'll tell you a quick story. This was just not that many years ago, but I live in a little town of Corbeil, Ontario, birthplace of the John Quintuplets, and just south of North Bay, but we're 45 minutes from the Quebec border. So there's a big wood mill there, Tembec, now called Rayonier, but there's a big mill there. And they buy a lot of the logs in Ontario. The trucks would have to drive down Highway 63, cross the bridge, and as soon as they cross the bridge into Quebec, they'd pull over and decouple the tractor from the trailer. The trailer would come back to Ontario, and a Quebec trailer would have to go and pick up, or a Quebec truck would have to go and pick up that trailer, and they would drive it 60 feet into the parking lot of Tembec, 60 feet, because you're not allowed to transport. Now that is one of those kinds of red tape and one of those rules that were changed in my political career. But it's those kind of things that drive you crazy. And so we've got a long way to go on interprovincial trade. You know, there's a different requirement for first aid kit in every truck, in a truck in every province. How many bandages you need, how many yards of gauze you need, all of that is different in every province. And so it drives the trucking costs up when you've got to stack up for everybody. There are different tire pressures in every province. These are the kind of things that we're working on through our red tape reduction. But you can't do it without the other provinces. We've all got to come. So our teams are meeting on a monthly basis. I meet with my ministerial counterparts now electronically on a frequent basis. We're more COVID than we are interprovincial trade right now, but we're all turning our attention back to the interprovincial trade file. But our staff have been working on it nonstop, and we hope to make good progress on that. Probably more progress in the next year than we have in the last 20.
Excellent. We have a number of similar questions.
I'll try not to talk so long, but
No,
you
that's
get me
fine.
going.
Would Vic have an update on the Ring of Fire?
Yeah, of course. I can tell you, yesterday, I've lost track of the days because, you know, one day in COVID is like about a month in a normal time. It was either yesterday, I don't think it was this morning, it was either yesterday or the day before, we announced our critical mineral plan. And Minister Rickford launched it. I was there to speak about the economic development importance of it. And of course, the chromite that's found in the Ring of Fire, which is, if you look at a map in Ontario and you look at James Bay and you see Attawapiskat, you kind of go 300 kilometers due west and you'll find where the Ring of Fire is. I've been there 5 times. My first time ever was in 2011. And then I went each year for 4 more years, and watching the development of the Ring of Fire. And watching it falter under the previous government. I'll be very blunt about that. And Minister Rickford has done a remarkable job. We now have environmental assessments underway with in fact, it's the First Nations who are doing the environmental assessments. They're the ones who ordered the environmental assessments all along the Esker, the route that the road will go from a place called Nakina all the way up to Webequie and the Ring of Fire area. It's a tremendous undertaking, but the first time that I've ever seen real progress is since our government got elected. And so you'll see us continue to make announcements on the Ring of Fire. Last year at PDAC, the Prospectors and Developers Show in Toronto, Minister Rickford had all of the chiefs and the premier sitting at a table signing an historic document that allowed for the environmental assessments to go ahead and begin to plan to bring that valuable chromite. You can't make stainless steel without it. And we're the only place in North America. So it's going to be a critical mineral. And again, for the US as well.
Excellent. Next question is local. Two-way all-day go is rightfully in the future of this community to tighten our link with the GTA economic engine. Waterloo Region's LRT project is expanding into Cambridge with the expectation of provincial and federal help. How high a priority is two-way all-day go transit for Waterloo Region?
I will tell you what I have continued to tell the Premier and Caroline Mulroney, Minister of Transportation, that I have never been to one event west of Mississauga that we don't hear about this. And that's how high a priority it is to you, which means that's how high a priority it is to the Premier and to our government. So we'll continue to have this going through the processes that it needs to go through. But know that we understand that for the Waterloo region, you know, we heard it from Communitech and others loud and clear that we cannot continue to grow and to be able to provide Ontario with these valuable jobs and growth. Without it, we've heard you loud and clear.
Excellent. Question online. Do you have a list of websites to search Canadian and Ontario-made products? My friends and I share information on what's made in Canada and what barcodes reflect Canadian or at least North American-made products.
Yes, is it supportonteriomade.ca? I hope I'm giving you the right one. But if you're on the CME, the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, you'll see the link. You'll certainly see the link there to the Ontario Made program. They put out a directory. Again, this isn't, I won't call it it's comprehensive because it has more than 8,000 products on it and more than 2,000 businesses. So these are the ones that have registered, supportonteriomade.ca. These are the ones who have registered with the Ontario Made program of the CME. And you'll see more marketing from us in the coming months as we continue to push out the Ontario Made program.
Excellent. Another question online. Hi, Minister. Can you share with the Confederation Club participants tonight what it's like to chair the cabinet? It's one of those roles that's often overlooked, but it's critical to running Ontario's government. Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. You know, I keep my gavel handy, and it's fascinating. You know, when we were doing them in person. Of course, first of all, it's an honor to chair Premier Ford's cabinet. It is a great, absolutely spectacular team that Premier Ford has assembled. And when we were in person, it's a lot different. There's a different decorum. We sit around a very long table. The cabinet sits at the same table. There's some support staff behind. It's in a very small room, very narrow room. But you can see everybody. You know, we're making lists of who's speaking and when. You try to direct the meeting along so that they don't go on forever. You try to be respectful. You try to be fair to everybody. You try not to let certain people dominate the day's discussion. You try to have good involvement from everybody. So you coax some out of some people, and you calm others down. So it's a good combination, but it's a great team, right? There's great camaraderie as well. Every once in a while, we have a couple of crack ups. We got a couple of fun people who like to lighten up the moments every once in a while. So the transition to electronic has been at the beginning difficult, but now it's beautiful. I'll tell you, tomorrow's Friday. Tomorrow will be, I think, our 175th, I might be off by a number or two, cabinet meeting since COVID. So that's virtually almost every second day. When you think about 175 cabinet meetings under COVID. We've had Peter Bethenfalvey, the chair of Treasury Board, will tell you, we've had over 90 Treasury Board meetings, which I also sit on. So it's really interesting, the dynamics. You can see everybody. It's like the Brady Bunch screen. And so we use the electronic hand, and they will text me on my BlackBerry, by the way. They'll text me if they're on a phone, if they're phoned in. And if not, we are on one of the electronic platforms. I can see the hands up. And, you know, it's nice and smooth. Nobody speaks out. Nobody blurts anything out. It's very respectful. And I'm liking it. You know, it's taught us there's a fabulous way to do business. I haven't given a wet signature on any cabinet document in a year. It's been, I don't know, 1,500 maybe, all electronic signatures. It's shown us that Ontario is in the digital age, that we can do these things from anywhere in the world. I told you, I'm in Corbeil, Ontario. 4,800 people live here, and here we are. I'm doing business worldwide. I did business in Taiwan, either late last night or early this morning, whenever it was, so depending on the time zone. I'm doing business worldwide from my office, my home office here in Corbeil. I haven't left this chair in almost a year.
Wow. It's a different world.
Very, about 175 cabinet meetings from this chair, if you can imagine.
Wow. What policy innovations might we expect to create jobs and enhance our workforce for a green energy transition, which would seem to be an inevitable need for us?
Great question. So let's go to the announcements that were made by Ford in Oakville, talking about their EV platform. Ontario is going to be their global hub for electronic vehicles. Chrysler's announcement, followed by General Motors' announcement in Oshawa, of putting 1,700 people back to work. And then GM's announcement about Ingersoll, converting the CAMI plant to making an electric delivery vehicle designed for FedEx as their launch customer. This tells us that the companies, they've gone back to that, what I talked about in my boring speech at the beginning about the 7 billion. That 7 billion that we've reduced the cost of doing business is exactly why Ford, Chrysler, General Motors are making these investments, because we've lowered the cost of doing business. And so we're seizing this opportunity now. And we're saying we're not satisfied just with the vehicle production. We want the full supply chain, and then we want the critical minerals as well. And so we've got the critical minerals. Cobalt, Ontario, about 100 clicks north of me here. We invested $5 million on the 16th of December into a company called First Cobalt. They are one of the only permitted smelters in all of North America. Now, of course, it's 100 years old. They've had permits forever. So to get a permit today, good luck. Good luck trying to get through anywhere in North America. They're already permitted. And so they are going to be processing cobalt, which is required in electric vehicle batteries. Go a little further north in a little community of Hearst, and they are mining lithium. I'm sorry, they're mining graphite. Go west to north of Red Lake, and they are mining lithium. So we have the critical minerals. And of course, down the street from me here in Sudbury, Ontario, is one of the largest deposits of nickel in the world. So we've got all the critical minerals on this end. We're now manufacturing the vehicles on this end. It's the piece in the middle that we're looking at now. And this is the supply chain, production of batteries, all of the components that are going to be required. So what are we doing about that? That is how we're making our investment in green energy. We are advancing investments to the auto companies and to the critical mineral companies. And if necessary, and if there's a good prospect, we'll always look at everything in the middle pocket as well. And so that's where we chose to invest. And that is showing the fact that these companies have signed up in Ontario is telling the world that they like our environmental plan as well. We're investing on that end of the scale.
Excellent. Just time for a couple more questions. We've seen local housing prices skyrocket recently. Is there a way that you can envision the government boosting the creation of affordable housing to increase developers' interest in building this type of housing?
So you've seen Minister Steve Clark. He has done an absolutely spectacular job as the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing in adding to our affordable housing stock in Ontario. I haven't witnessed the specific examples in the Waterloo region, but I certainly am well aware of the ones throughout my neck of the woods in Northern Ontario. And we do it pan Ontario. It's not meant for just one place. So I know that he has been advancing that file and investing hundreds of millions of dollars in affordable housing solutions. In fact, just this week, I can't remember which day this week, there were investments made again all over the province in homelessness funding and housing solutions for our homeless. I forget how many hundreds of millions was announced this week. Again, I know my local area. I made the announcements in Sudbury, Manitoulin, Algoma, Cochrane, and North Bay. So I know how many tens upon tens of millions were in this region. And again, it's a pan-provincial program. So while I don't have those numbers handy, I know that there are equal investments per population right across Ontario. I think Minister Clark has done an absolutely spectacular job on that file.
Excellent. Okay, final question of the evening. Although the steps your government is taking to help businesses in particular is commendable, I'm concerned about the high levels of debt that continuous deficit spending has caused. Right now, interest rates are historically artificially low. What is going to happen when interest rates go up as inflation is starting to creep into the economy? Higher interest rates will lead to increased debt service costs, which will further increase the deficit and debt. The province's debt is already well over $300 billion. What is the plan to deal with Ontario's massive debt?
First of all, the people that are struggling, we want them to know that we will continue to support them, support their families. And the Premier has said, yes, we understand the concern and the importance of debt and deficit. We talked about it in our first year so much, but COVID has, quite frankly, changed everything. We wanted to make sure that we're supporting families, that we're supporting our seniors, that we're supporting our students, and so we will continue to invest. So you need to know that right away, that as long as there's COVID, you're going to see continued investment from the province of Ontario. We fully expect that our economy will continue to be robust. We know that you're going to see a budget. It was announced, I think, this morning that the budget is the 24th of March. So you're going to hear more from the Minister of Finance. So I don't want to steal any of his thunder. I would say to you, we have our plans. You're going to see that we fully expect to grow our economy. That's why the Premier has, put it out there that Ontario is open for business and open for jobs. We will work to do everything we can to recover. I know that we continue to be a very stable place for investors to buy our bonds. I can tell you my last trip to England, France, and Germany when we were out promoting Ontario, I met with one of the presidents of one of the largest banks in France, and they were buying our bonds that day, as a matter of fact, billions of dollars of them. They view us as a sea of tranquility in a rougher world. Ontario does have that capacity and that respect worldwide. And so I would ask you to pay particular attention to the Minister of Finance's announcement on the 24th of March, and know that we're going to be doing everything we can to continue to provide significant support to families, seniors, and businesses, while he'll talk to you about the deficit, the debt, and our financial plans forward. I can give you the economic side of it forward.
Good. Well, thanks very much, Vic, for a very interesting and informative presentation. I will now pass you back to our host, Barbara, to formally thank you.
Some wonderful data points there. Being a bit of a data person, I'm delighted to hear so many positive things that are happening in light of everything that's happened with COVID. Minister Fedeli, on behalf of the Confederation Club, I'd like to sincerely thank you for the time you've spent this evening telling us about economic recovery for small business and taking our questions and helping to really bring Canadian digital politics to life. Folks, it looks like we're going to continue virtually, so we'll be definitely announcing our future speakers in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye on your inbox, and please do answer the poll when you exit, and encourage you also to share this evening's recording once you receive it with your friends and family. Thanks again for attending, and have a good night.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I enjoyed that tonight. I hope your participants enjoyed that as well. I know I sure did tonight. Thanks for the chance to chat.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beck.
Thank you, Minister. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.